Looks like somebody took that old park it anywhere saying just a little too far. But things go wrong in boating, we know that, and things can occur at the most inopportune times and in the most unexpected ways, just like some of the things we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Denmark, where this was the scene just a few weeks back, when the Danish Navy had to complete a search and rescue mission for 7 sailors who'd been forced to abandon their vessel after a collision in the North Sea. The incident occurred approximately 20 nautical miles west of the Danish town of Ringkøbing, where the general cargo vessel Helge had departed Antwerp and was sailing north along the Danish coast bound for Norway, when all of a sudden it ran into some rough weather and ran into issues trying to control the vessel. During this time, the Helge winds up crossing paths with the Bahamas-flagged cargo vessel Wild Cosmos, and the two ships collide, forcing the crew of the Helge to abandon ship due to damage caused during the incident. As can be seen here, the Helge is barely afloat following the collision. Fortunately, all 7 sailors on board the vessel were rescued without any injuries. Now, the initial report from the boat's owners claimed that the vessel could not be salvaged due to the rough weather conditions it was facing during the time of the incident. But these images surfaced a few days later. The boat actually held together through the storm, tugboats were sent out, and salvage crews, and they were actually able to get the vessel towed back into port. But these images show the heavy damage sustained during the incident. Our next story to make the boating news this week, of course, is going to be Hurricane Ian, which every news media outlet is talking about here in North America as the storm bears down on Florida. But of course, before it hits Florida, the storm is currently making impact in Cuba. But one of the wildest parts about this is the Coast Guard is still reporting that it's having interdictions with Cuban migrants who are taking to the sea in derelict vessels ahead of the storm, trying to make it to the US coast. Just in the last 4 days alone, they've had several interdictions rescuing over 100 Cuban migrants who are trying to make it to the coast. But the Coast Guard claims that every single one of these people is lucky to be alive. Many of these vessels were facing rough sea conditions and taking on water by the time the Coast Guard arrived. The Coast Guard urges anybody who might have any Cuban relatives who are trying to take to the sea, do everything in your power to try and talk them out of it. I mean, the kind of vessels we see these guys trying to cross in, there is absolutely no way they will survive in a Category 3 or 4 hurricane as it crosses over them. And let's be honest, if things go wrong while you're out in sea during a Category 3 or 4 hurricane like this, there's not like assistance is going to be anywhere near you during that time. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up to the coast of Martha's Vineyard, where a few weeks back, the sailing vessel Encore was out sailing when a man fell overboard in a heavy fog, a driving rain, and rough seas off the coast of the vineyard. Quickly, the crew of the Encore issued a man overboard distress signal to the Coast Guard. Fortunately for this crew, though, the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office actually had a vessel on patrol in the area during the time of the incident and responded to the distress call as well. Rescuers faced difficult conditions with visibility less than 200 or 300 foot in the fog. In fact, as seen in these images here, they almost passed the man overboard. Fortunately, he had an oar in his hand, which was the one thing that made them distinguish him, and they were able to pull him up. The Sheriff's Office really deserves praise on this one. They took the spot where the man went overboard, calculated the drift, and used that to actually find the location where the man should be. If they would not have done that, this would have been a difficult rescue in these conditions. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Colorado, where this was the scene just a few weeks ago when 2 women mistakenly drove their car down a boat ramp at the Cherokee Creek Reservoir, sinking their car in the water. The ladies actually made the 911 call from inside the sinking car, letting authorities know they just left a wedding reception held inside the park on a foggy night, and the driver told deputies she just didn't see the reservoir and actually drove into the water at approximately 30 miles an hour. Fortunately, deputies were quick to arrive at the scene and quickly dove into the water, rescuing the 2 women and bringing them to safety without injury. The car was pulled from the water the next day. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit me up on Facebook or Instagram and let me know, and you might see your stories over here. Just like Ann Shelton Pond, Randy Sabert, Michael Bush, David Brewer, and Daniel Hathaway did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here. If not, we're coming to steal your drain plug.